All right, we're gonna be watching an I gonna say Ashikai flip, Nod-Krai lore and theory video. I already know this is gonna be absolutely insane because it's about Nod-Krai. Nod-Krai has already been insane lore and story wise. And it's about Nod-Krai's mythological inspiration. So I guess it's gonna be about what inspired Nod-Krai like in the real world, like which is gonna be interesting to see like what, and then obviously we'll see what's gonna happen in the future. By the way, one thing I do want to say about what will probably happen in Luna 2 6.1, with like act wise, is that we're probably gonna get two acts, right? Act 3 and 4, and since we're only getting Nefer, Act 3 is going to be the more boring patch with zero cut scenes that probably goes for like 3 hours, and then Act 4 is going to be the Nefer patch. That's what I think it's going to happen. I'm going to see if I'm correct, and I've have it here on like recorded. So yeah, I'll see if I'm correct because that's what usually happens. But I've got to be honest, Act 3 will still be insane because it's Nod-Krai. Anyway, let's get into it.
So after I finished all the quests available in Luna 1, I decided to sit down
I've done
and
some
read through
world
a
quests
Finnish
as well.
epic called the Kalevala because, well, Nod-Krai is full of references to Finnish folklore and mythology, especially in the Hymns of the Far North
I haven't read the book.
And the Kalevala is one of the most well-known compilations of Finnish folklore that you can get in English. While it is technically just a single person's attempt at creating a linear narrative out of a collection of incomplete or inconsistent runic hymns, I figured it would still be a great place to start. You'll understand that I was primarily doing this for my own
Wait, we met Ashikai in Nod-Krai, actually. That's crazy.
benefit, but as I finished the Kalevala and began to broaden the scope of my research, it occurred to me that I should probably share my findings with you guys. Not because they're particularly mind-blowing or anything, but because their
I feel like
references
they're gonna
are
be
pretty
mind-blowing
fun
to
and
me.
also really interesting, and I like learning new things. And if you're watching this channel, you probably do too. Now that said, I did end up finding so many things that my findings have exceeded 20,000 words. So I've just picked some of my favorite bits and compiled them into
Jesus Christ,
this
alright.
video. The rest of it I'm gonna toss.
What do you mean it's not going to be mind-blowing? You got 20,000, you got like 10 essays.
Another video, which is going to be more of a full-fledged theory based on some details that I found in hymns.
Bro, you give a 20,000 word essay to your teacher, your teacher's giving you a flipping F, bro. Your teacher's failing.
North and some other
Oh my
assorted
God.
locations. So if I gloss over a topic or just don't mention something in this video, it's probably because I've put it in the other one. But before we jump into things, I would like you to know that this educational experience has been sponsored by the winner of the Gamescom 2025 Best Mobile Game Award, Love and Deep Space.
But what the fuck is this logo, bro?
If you're unfamiliar with this game, Love and Deep Space is a highly interactive and story-driven
Sorry,
3D
Ashikai,
OTA
great you got
sim.
sponsored.
Then
I
check
don't
out the link in the description to experience Love and to our little... Well, maybe not. A big thanks to Love and Deep Space for sponsoring this video.
Biggest
now
gacha game, by the way.
Well, to our little corner of the universe where we're going to talk about all the references to Finnish mythology that we can find in Nod-Krai. Well, maybe not all of them, but as many as I feel like. And with those expectations set, I will remind you that timestamps and spoiler warnings can be found in the description box as always.
I think I've done all the big
world
quests as well.
Let's get things started. Also, I'm sorry for the many ways in which I am about to butcher a bunch of different languages. Okay, so like I said, most of Nod-Krai seems to be pulling from Finnish folklore, so we're going to start things off by going through the names of Teyvat's highest ranked deities as they are found in Hymns of the Far North.
By the way, I'm guessing the Traveler never actually almost touches the moon. Oh wait, no, I guess that's supposed to represent the moon marrow. I guess. Right, the Traveler absorbing the moon marrow, I guess.
Things off by going through the names of Teyvat's highest ranked deities as they are found in Hymns of the Far North while I explain most of the relevant aspects of the Finnish pantheon. And of course, we have to start with the oldest and greatest deity of all, the big dragon daddy himself, Nibelung. Hymns of the Far North call him Iannikoinen or Takoya Iannikoinen. Now, both variations of this name refer to Ilmarinen, which is one of Finnish mythology's oldest deities and creator gods. Ilmarinen falls into the Sky Father category, similar to figures like Odin or Zeus. And as a creator deity, he's credited with having forged the sun.
Isn't Odin like big with like lore-wise? Not like lore-wise, like he's actually the gay, but like connection-wise with Irminsul as well.
To figures like Odin or Zeus. And as a creator deity, he's credited with having forged the sun, moon, and sky, which is why he's also frequently depicted as a blacksmith or an inventor. So when Hymns of the Far North call Iannikoinen the primeval blacksmith, they're making a very, very direct reference to Ilmarinen. Now, Ilmarinen is actually a great name for Nibelung, since the latter is a creator god with deep alchemical connections, and alchemy seems to be Teyvat's primary method of creation magic. Plus, he's also credited with forging the bones of the earth and a great sky chariot, and if Hymns of the Far North is accurate, then he also likely made the celestial nails that can mend or destroy the world. He also made the moons, and he either is or
Yeah, the
probably
moon
made
one's
the
big.
sun, just like Ilmarinen. And that makes me wonder if the
Making
initial
the sun is
firmament was also
crazy.
made by Nibelung, given how Ilmarinen also forged the Dome of the Sky. It would make a lot of sense to me if Nibelung was the one to raise the initial barrier in the sky.
Oh, and then the primordial one's the ones that maintaining it,
because
right?
it probably would have provided Teyvat with some level of protection against the
Yeah,
abyss
okay,
while
that
he
makes
was
sense.
gone investigating stuff in deep space. Now, mythology isn't static. It evolves over time as external and
Wait, why did I feel like when she said deep space, there was something about love in deep
stuff
space?
in deep space.
I knew it. as soon as she said deep space, and then I'm like, she's sponsored by Love in Deep Space. I'm like, there's gotta be something. And I saw the text. I was like, okay, I didn't read the text. I need to go back. It's gonna be something about Love in Deep Space. Fuck it up.
Now, mythology isn't
I know
static. It evolves over time as external and internal
Oh,
forces
God
influence
damn
the
it.
storytellers who pass these myths along. And as a result of these influences, Ilmarinen experienced a transformation into Ukko Ilmarai, which means something like Grandfather Sky or Skyfather. Ilmarinen also seems to have subsequently been split into the sky deity
Hasn't he been
Ukko
known as
and the culture
Skyfather?
hero slash blacksmith Ilmarinen. And this was probably due to the influence of Christianity as it moved into Finland. So in later depictions, including the Kalevala, many of Ilmarinen's creator deity accomplishments are reattributed and split between Ukko and Wainamoinen. Wainamoinen was known as being a great warrior and a bard with magic songs, and he greatly resembles the
Interesting.
Norse god Odin, so you can safely think of him in those terms. But I'm gonna make a bit of a theoretical leap here and suggest that Wainamoinen is actually analogous to the heavenly principles in Genshin for a couple of reasons. First, Wainamoinen is a later development in Finnish folklore, and he absorbed a lot of Ilmarinen's creator aspects, as I said. This is pretty similar to how the heavenly principles usurped Nibelung's authority. Additionally, hymns of the far north call the heavenly principles Pitkammunin, which is another name for Ukko, another recipient of Ilmarinen's creator aspects. However, in the runic songs where Pitkammunin is mentioned, Wainamoinen is often mentioned in his place, so I'm kind of conflating the two here. There are more reasons for this that I would love to dive into, but I'm gonna save that for my second video. Now, all that said, I'm not 100% sure if
it's gonna
there's
be
a
like 10
mythological or
videos.
folklore explanation for the whole Lord of Seven Calamities title that Pitkammunin has. I did a lot of reading, and I couldn't really find anything, so I think that might be Genshin specific. In fact, it might just be referring to the seven Gnosis, because the seven Gnosis attract calamities, and there are 7 of them. And the Heavenly Principles was the one responsible for splitting the third descender into those 7 pieces. Okay, so now that we've talked about the 2 highest
Yeah, because isn't it who, yeah, I mean, yeah, and also, like, what was it Miko said? It would just invite trouble. Was it Miko? Yeah, it was Miko who just gave it away because she was like, it would just invite trouble. From the Fatui, but still.
for splitting the third descender into those
Trouble
7
from the
pieces.
Fatui.
Okay, so now that we've talked about the 2 highest
really.
powers of the
Close.
land, Nibelung and the Heavenly Principles, let's move on to their subordinates, starting with the 4 shades.
Yeah.
Hymns of the Far North give
then we're
some
gonna
new
get to the
names for the shades as
sisters?
well, except for Asmodee, as her hymn has been redacted.
Oh, Modee.
Because of course they're not going to give us the hymn for the shade that we're most curious about. That would be way too easy. So let's just talk about the ones we do have. Naberius is given the name Mataraka, which translates into Origin Woman, a fertility goddess from Sami shamanism. Now, I really wish I had some more interesting facts about her to share, but I really couldn't find
By
them.
the way, I do want to say, do you know what we see, like, this is who, Naburi, this is who Ryandotter, I guess, consumed, I guess. I really wish, do you know where's, like, she could still speak, like, they could still speak to each other, because she's, like, in her conscious, like, Naburius is in Ryandotter's, like, consciousness, right? I really wish when it was, like, simulating her talking, like, they made, like, a figure of her talking, I really wish they showed this design, like, her original design, and not just a blue version of Ryandotter. I do wish they showed her, like, behind her, like, talking, because she looks really cool. But yeah, that's just a personal grievance. That's a small little nitpick for me. I just really wish they at least allowed this design to flourish and have her instead of just a blue Ryandotter. But yeah.
Now, I really wish I had some more interesting facts about her to share, but I really couldn't find much beyond a loose connection to the Finnish goddess of the earth, Maema, and that's only noteworthy because she's sometimes called Ukko's mother or wife and is generally depicted alongside of a sun, kind of like a moon. It really just depends on the myth. Maiama is also the mother of snakes, which in my opinion fits with Rhine-daughter being the mother of dragons, and since Rhine-daughter has fused with Naberius, I think that's kind of a relevant point. As for Mataraka herself, well,
Snake with wings.
all I can really add here is that the Sami people, who are indigenous to Norway, Sweden, Finland, and parts of Russia, have a lot of traditions surrounding reindeer, which I find quite interesting in the context of the Frost Moon Scions and their deer traits. It doesn't really link back to Naberius, though, so take that for what you will. The Hymns of the Far North grants Renova the name Tuonetar, which literally means Lady Death. It's pretty on the nose, and there's not much to add here, except that in the Kalevala, Tuonetar is in possession of the Brew of Oblivion, which essentially wipes the memories of anyone who drinks it. This is extremely similar to the effects of Arlecchino's Bale Moon Bloodfire, which does the exact same thing. And I feel like that matters because Arlecchino seems to have some kind of curse or blessing tied directly to Renova, or at least to the root of Renova's powers.
I mean, same colors.
May not be found in the Crimson Moon. Once again, though, this name is pretty straightforward. Istaroth, on the other hand, has a rather peculiar name given to her here. Lymelia, or Lima, a name that means luck or beginning. The reason why I find this name...
she's like time, like the beginning of time. Everything begins with time. I don't know what I'm saying.
So curious and such a weird choice is because Lima is a Baltic goddess of fate, quite similar to the Greek Moirai or Nordic Norns. And much like Lima's Greek and Nordic counterparts, she's sometimes part of a trinity. And that really makes me wonder if Hoyoverse is hinting at her connections to the moons, since they are the ones who are generally compared to the triple fate goddesses.
I mean, she has like an elegant moon, like shiny design, kinda, I guess, with like cape. It's like shiny. I don't know. I guess it. I mean, her cape definitely reminds me. She definitely has like reminds me of the moon as well.
Curiously, though, when she is a part of a trinity, Lima was assigned the role of predicting a
just
human's life, while Dahlia monitored the actual manifestation of that prophecy she made, and Giltnane decided when life would end. I just find this an odd choice of name for a time goddess, although Hymns of the Far North does call her someone who was never born and who will never die. So it does kind of feel like she's stuck at a single point of origin and maybe viewing all possible futures all at once. And maybe that's why she has a name that means beginning. I could kind of get behind that. But also, it really bothers me that her hymn talks about 4 imprisoned moons while there are only 3 moons everywhere else. Like, I know that Nod-Krai is technically built upon the remains of an unborn 4th moon, but if it's not born, then is it also imprisoned? A question for another time, perhaps. Anyway, that's all I have on the shade, so let's move on to the moon.
Interesting. I forget that. Yeah, Nod-Krai is just the base of like a failed moon. I forget that. Yeah, wasn't it born from a failed moon from the war where the dragon sovereigns tried to create a new moon and it failed, and that's what created Nod-Krai, right? I got that from another theory. I didn't come up with that myself, obviously. I got that from another theory. Was that Minzlif? Or was it actually... I think it was Minzlif. Oh no, I learned that from... No, that wasn't a lore thing. Yeah, I learned that from Minzlif during the talk she had with Bran. That's on Bran's channel. Make sure you check that out. Pretty interesting. But yeah, that's where I learned about the 4th moon stuff.
Moons and Sealies that we have new names for.
Medical weight loss is not cheating.
Oh my god, I feel like this ad is so bullshit. Like, it's actual bullshit. Anyway, I need to get that out there once.
Finnish, whenever you see the suffix of tar, you can immediately translate it into lady or maiden in your head. As an example, Renova's second name, Tuonetar, is made up of Tuone, which means death, and Tar, which means lady or maiden, hence Lady Death. If we look at Ku-Tar, we can break it down again. Ku means moon, Tar means maiden, and that's why she is called the Moon Maiden. Likewise, the full title of the Frost Moon is Hurekutar,
perfect translation,
which literally translates into Maiden of the Frost Moon, because Hure means frost. Similarly, the name of the first angel who fought alongside the Voyager...
Thank God! There's freaking something in English that's a perfect translation.
Because Hure means frost. Similarly, the name of the first angel who fought alongside the Voyager in the war against Heaven is called Koitar, wherein Koi means dawn. That makes her the Dawn Maiden, or as she's also called, the Dawn Star, which is actually super funny for a name because the Dawn Star is also a morning star, which is also another name or epithet for Lucifer, who also fought against Heaven, just like she did. Although I will argue that if the first angel is Lady Dawn,
that's supposed to represent
a star in her name, and Voyager had stars in their eyes, which is how they are often described, then Voyager is kind of like Lady Dawn's star, so together they would make up the Dawn Star. But honestly, that's just kind of semantics at this point. Although I do think it's very interesting how in a lot of legends in Teyvat about the moons, they say that the moons loved the quote, stars of daybreak, which would be the dawn stars or the morning stars. So the moons likely thought very highly of both the Voyager and the first angel, the Dawn Maiden, and following very highly of both the Voyager and the first angel, the Dawn Maiden. And following our Tar pattern, we also have Luonotar, or Nature Maiden. Luonotar can refer to either the oldest and most primordial female entity in Finnish mythology, or a classification of feminine nature spirits. Whether singular or plural, Luonotar, also known as Kave, are frequently associated with the moon, especially the waxing moon, since as a goddess, Kave is said to chase away the evil Kumet that steals the moon.
Is that a waxing moon
every cycle? I personally think that this relationship between the Kave and the Luonotar and the moon implies that Kuhenki, or moon spirits, are also a type of Kave, especially since Lauma says that Luonotar is a more evolved or mature form of the Kuhenki. And speaking of moons, over on my channel's Discord, we were speculating on the mysterious identity of this Tholindis that Rebir was screaming about. And we came up with a lot of interesting theories, all of which pointed back to the idea that Tholindis is most likely the name of one of the moons. Probably Solnari, aka Sonnet, aka the iridescent moon. Probably. Just to share a couple of fun examples, Hyde pointed out that Thol is Old Norse for fir tree, while Lind could both refer to shields, linden trees, or even a lindworm. So in that case, lindworm would be a dragon association, which would make sense because the moons are a creation of the dragons. Along those same lines, Nave pointed out that Dis denotes a female Nordic deity, while Tholin is a type of organic compound formed by solar or cosmic radiation. And Tholin polymers are generally reddish, providing a link between the crimson moon and Tholindis. What I find interesting about this is that tholins are thought to be ingredients for the so-called primordial soup conditions that allowed for the creation of life on Earth. All of these circumstantial clues, plus the fact that Rebir screams Tholindis' name and he's also the Rasher of Solnari, or hunter of the moon named Solnari, points to the possibility that Tholindis is another name for Solnari, which we already know is another name for Sonnet. And if we assume Solnari, or hunter of the moon named Solnari, points to the possibility that Tholindis is another name for Solnari, which we already know is another name for Sonnet. And if we assume that all of these
and he is a moon hunter, so
these connections work together really well, then we could maybe say that Tholindis is like a tree from which the conditions of life are made. And that would make the fact that Rebir's weapon is called Barnstalker pretty funny, because a Barnstalker is a guardian tree that's associated with childbirth. So, two trees of life. Imagery that seems to be associated with entities that are related to death. Anyway, I thought that was a fun idea. But okay, back to the Hymns of the Far North, because we haven't talked about the newest names for the second and third Descenders, and that's kind of a big lore drop. Let's start with the second Descender, who we've been calling Voyager for the last few patches. Now, Voyager is an incredibly old space traveler astral projecting their spirit throughout the universe from some unknown location. She was quite fond of Nibelung, yay for space besties, so when she found out that this planet had been conquered by the first Descender, aka the Heavenly Principles, aka Pitkamunin, she indwelled within the body of a young man, courted the first angel Quatar, and launched a rebellion against Teyvat's new ruler from the golden city of Hyperborea. Now, Hymns of the Far North calls Voyager Soidervoinen, which is another title for the Finnish deity Samsa Pellervoinen, Samsa for short. Samsa was a vegetation deity, the creator of trees, and a god who sleeps all winter with his plants only to awaken alongside them every spring. Now, if you did the Hisi Island world quests, you'll learn that Voyager was responsible for creating the Sampo Mill, which in Teyvat is kind of like a matter synthesizer ripped straight out of Star Trek. It's not a perfect comparison, but you get the idea, right? This is actually a pretty good reimagination of the Sampo Mill that's found in Finnish folklore, since the Sampo Mill was able to create infinite grain, gold, and salt from basically nothing. However, in Finnish folklore, it wasn't Samsa who made the Sampo, but Ilmarinen, which—
Stop showing him on screen! What the? Oh my god, I can't focus with this Sampo popping up, bro.
folklore, it
I
wasn't
haven't seen Sampo in a while.
Samsa who made the Sampo, but Ilmarinen, which in this case would be Nibelung. And that leads me to believe that the Voyager created or altered their version of the Sampo based on Nibelung's work or technology. And in fact, we know that Koitar taught the Voyager the, quote, secrets behind the powers of creation, so he likely made the Sampo based on that information. Now, I do want to point out that this
Why is it making me laugh every time? I'm sorry. It's making me laugh every time, but I don't know why.
He likely made the Sampo based on that
Don't know why. These
information.
are
Now,
bit.
I do want to point out that this reattribution of the Sampo's creation from Ilmarinen to Samsa within the context of Teyvat actually isn't too far off base, because Samsa was often said to sow the fields.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. She said S and I was getting ready for Sampo.
Actually isn't too far off base, because Samsa was often said to sow the fields using seeds and grain taken from the Sampo. So there is a legitimate connection there. In addition to this, it's worth mentioning that the folklore Sampo is sometimes equated to the Finnish.
I'm sorry, I can't. I don't know why it's making me laugh so much. I can't focus. I can't. I can't, man. I can't focus. It's just Sampo in a bin. It's making me freaking popping out of nowhere. It's making me laugh, and I don't know why. Just reset. A mental reset. I'm not going to get a reset, am I?
In addition to this, it's worth mentioning that the folklore Sampo is sometimes equated to the Finnish equivalent of a world tree, where it mills gold and other such things as the world rotates around its axis, which is the Sampo mill. And like I said, Samsa is credited as being the creator of trees, hence Sampo tree, creator of trees, you get the idea. Now there is a lot more to be said about the myth of the Sampo and everything around it and its relevance to the game, but I am saving that for another video, because when I say there's a lot, I mean there's a lot.
Alright.
In Albion, no matter where you go or what you
I'll
do,
probably
your
watch that
mouth will
video
accompany you on your journey.
So that brings us to Descender number 3, who now has a name, Saralainen. Now, technically speaking, Saralainen isn't
Wait, I guess that was from a book, though, right?
Who now has a name, Saralainen.
That was the one who was used to create the Gnosis. But still no useful fucking visuals. Oh, no.
Now, technically speaking, Saralainen isn't actually the name of any deity. It's just a name that means islander.
Just show the Chavra,
It is sometimes used in the Kalevala as another name for the culture hero, Lemminkainen. Lemminkainen's story is actually quite long, but there's one portion of it in particular that I think fits really, really well with the story of the third descender. So in the Kalevala, Lemminkainen travels to the wintry lands of Pohjola, where its ruler, the witch Louhi, offers him her daughter's hand in marriage if he can accomplish a certain amount of tasks. One of these tasks is killing a swan that's floating in the river of death, and while he's out there trying to hunt down the swan, he ends up getting torn into a bunch of little pieces that sink to the bottom of the river. Eventually, his mother finds out, dredges all his bits up from the bottom of the river, and pieces him back together again. If this story sounds familiar to you, it's because in the Hymns of the Far North, it says that Saralainen was supposed to marry the daughter of Pakasuko before the heavenly principles ripped him into pieces. You know, the pieces that became the 7 Gnosis.
Yeah.
Now, Pakasuko is another name for Grandfather Frost, since Pakas means frosty and
That's what I thought about. Was like
father.
That's what I thought about. Was like ripped into pieces. The first thing that definitely came to mind was the Gnosis. Yeah.
Their name for Grandfather Frost, since Pakas means frosty and Uko means old man, father, or grandfather. Both Grandfather Frost and Pakasuko are other names for Dead Moroz, the personification of winter. Now, Dead Moroz actually has a daughter or granddaughter named Snegurochka, who is most likely the Tsaritsa equivalent in Genshin, which means that the third descender was the Tsaritsa's lover at one point. And I say this because Pakasuko is most certainly supposed to be the Bali Tsar, who preceded the Tsaritsa, and the Tsaritsa was already identified as his daughter. And Snegurochka's name has already appeared in Genshin. You can find it in the Ballad of the Fjords, where she's described as Ajax's lover. And no, not this Ajax, but the historical one, the hero Ajax, which means that the third descender is probably the original Ajax. Or
wow,
Ajax,
that's crazy.
You could say his name either way. Incidentally, Snegurochka's stories generally seem to involve her meeting a rather grisly end and, melting as a result. In one story, she falls in love with a shepherd and eventually melts because her heart grew too warm. So I'm assuming that the shepherd in this case is the third descender, so Saralainen. And we know that the Tsaritsa is gathering all of the Gnosis, and the Gnosis are the remnants of the third descender, and that's pretty reminiscent of how Lemminkainen's mother tried to put him back together again after he was split into a bunch of pieces. So all things considered, it does sound pretty likely that the Tsaritsa is trying to pieces. So all things considered, it does.
This is a Okay, I'm not sure.
Sound pretty likely that the Tsaritsa is trying to resurrect the third descendant.
Sure,
And
Ash
this
thought
whole
it was like a
situation
Pokemon
is incredibly
reference.
funny once you realize that Lemminkainen is often called Loverboy. Not just because a lot of his stories involve a lot of romance, but because he's the son of Lempo. Lempo should be a very familiar name for you since it's one of the regions in Nod-Krai that's found in Luna 1. And no, it's not part of Hymns of the Far North, but I want to talk about it anyway. Lempo or Lemitar is a deity that's connected to the negative aspects of love, which is why I find this whole Lemminaikin, aka Loverboy, son of Lempo, and also the third descender who is gonna marry the Tsaritsa, just really funny. Now, as a deity of love, some scholars like Ganander...
Damn, that means the Tsaritsa is old. The Tsaritsa has to be really old then, right?
Now, as a deity of love, some
really
scholars
old.
like Ganander liken Lempo to the demon Asmodeus because Asmodeus was known for cursing people with infidelity. This is a loose connection at best, but our fourth missing shade, Asmodee, is based on Asmodeus, and she has a rather unique relationship to the traveling twins, and according to Istaroth, she, quote, loves her new master more than herself, allegedly. Because of this, I find the fact that the twins' spaceship landed on Lempo Isle to be rather suspicious, especially since the word Lempo literally means ball lightning and is used to describe falling meteorites, as well as the caves or craters that are formed as a result of the impact. These impact zones are called Lempo's caves or Lempo's holes, and the traveler's spaceship is often described as a falling meteorite. And wouldn't you know it, there just so happens to be a cave behind the space where the ship fell. In fact, at the end of Luna 1's Archon quest, Rerir can be seen entering
I learned
that
this from
same
Mintsmith.
cave. Meanwhile, Columina seems to think
right?
that someone hid the spaceship intentionally, which is also really suspicious because, seriously, where would you even put a spaceship where no one could even find it, not even a moon goddess? Do you think it could be in an alternate space?
I guess underground. But...
I don't know. It could be a total coincidence, or it could be a +1 to the theory of the Traveler or the Abyss Twin being Asmodee's new master. Who knows? Matters of love aside, the deity Lempo has connections to blacksmithing, which is quite fitting given how this island is home to the Clink Clank Krumkake craft shop. Although now that I think about it, Lempo's connections with love's negative aspects kind of makes me look at these broken or patchwork heart symbols of Aino's a little bit differently. When Aino was first revealed,
I was thinking about when she talked about the Krumkake craft shop, I was thinking about the love hearts and just talking about the love thing. I was talking about the love hearts that Aino puts on.
Thought she was based off of this Pokemon trainer, Iono. There's definitely some shared inspiration and some design elements going on here, but the name
I mean, I did say before I thought something was a Pokemon reference. Pokemon reference right there. I pre-watched bro for everyone. Oh no. I think I've seen her on some real life billboards or something, I swear to God.
There's definitely some shared inspiration and some design elements going on here, but the name Aino comes from one of the most tragic characters found in the Kalevala. To TLDR the whole myth, basically, Aino was a young maiden who was being forced into a marriage with Väinämöinen. Remember him from earlier? She was technically the prize that Väinämöinen won after defeating her brother in a singing contest. But Aino wished to live as a young and free-spirited maiden forever, unmarried, and was thus so distraught at the prospect of marriage that she ended up drowning in a lake, in some versions intentionally and in others accidentally. Sometimes this results in her becoming a mermaid, nixie, or other water fae, which is probably why our playable Aino is Hydro. Our Aino also had an exceptionally troubling childhood and seemingly lost all of her will to live until she fell in love with building machines. Now she considers those machines to be her family, and frankly, that's kind of allegorically similar to how Kalevala's Aino became family with fish, in the sense that both Ainos feel most comfortable associated with non-humans. Aino's love of metalwork and machinery also likely stems from Lempo's association with blacksmithing, and I think that's pretty cool. Apart from Aino, Lempo Island is also home to a couple other fun references. The Eye of Krati, for example, is named after a Krat, which is a Finnish beast that guards treasure, especially stolen treasure.
I'm creeped out by that one.
It just so happens that this is one of the locations where the thief Reed Miller hid one of his own treasures, a proof of cognoscenti. But that's a story for another time. Further north of the Eye of Krati, you can find the Nothing
I want to know more about Reed Miller, bro, because I don't know why. Maybe I missed a bunch of stuff in the quest because I was skim reading a lot of it, of the world quest. I was reading the things that properly, the things I felt like were necessary to read, but I just felt like I learned nothing about Reed Miller. Reed Miller was mentioned hundreds of times, and I feel like I learned nothing about it except for he was a good guy. He had good intentions when stealing things. and like for his thievery and stuff. So I was like, I don't know, maybe I missed a bunch of stuff. So I want to get a video more dedicated to Reed Miller because I'm confused. And obviously he's the founder of the Treasure Hoarders, right? But yeah.
But that's a story
Founder
for
of
another time. Further north of the Eye of
CEOs.
Crotty, you can find the Nothing Passage, which contains a very cryptic world quest and some notes describing some very
Well, I think I've done this
questionable Fatui experiments. Now, I have no real basis for this, but I think the Nothing Passage is actually supposed to be named the No Thung Passage, which is another name for Graham, a dragon-slaying sword. Like I said, there's nothing really to back up this idea except for the fact that in the middle of this
Oh, yeah, I
world
haven't
quest,
done
you kind of
this
get yeeted through this void space, and there's like this giant
Jesus.
broken sword-looking thing in it. I mean, it's actually like a three-pronged thingamabob, but I do think that Hoyo shows us this particular angle
interesting.
on purpose. Partially because the
Where's
No
this
Thung blade
quest?
is pretty important in the ring cycle, and Hoyo loves referencing that opera.
Plastic. It's everywhere.
Hmm.
On our beaches, in our oceans.
That said, the quest itself is actually a reference to the Lovecraftian story Color Out of Space, where some colors...
Oh, that reminded me of the two sun things in that the little one's quest line.
descended from the sky and sucked the color and life out of everything within a large radius. The colors then tried to return to the sky from whence they came, but some of it still lingered behind. As weird as this quest was, I think the weirdest part is the Fatui's description of this, like, bug-eyed goat that's just staring out into space, seemingly entranced by some invisible hallucination. I've been wondering if that's a reference to how sometimes creatures can be totally transfixed by the moon. Cause, like, that note ends by mentioning that the goat's blood is green, which immediately reminded me of a passage from The Little Witch and the Undying Fire that also talked about how the original race of the world, the Nephilim, had green blood, and they also worshipped a blood-green moon. So I'm kind of starting to think that maybe lunar radiation from the Kuvaki could literally turn blood green somehow. Anyway, I think that's enough Lempo Isle for now. Let's move on to
radioactive,
Paha.
bro.
Actually, if I'm honest, I don't really have much to say about Paha. All I can really find on Paha is that they were a demonic cohort of Lempo, and their name means evil in like a bajillion different variations. So we have Paha Isle, which is home to a Fatui base and also a graveyard for people who fight against the evil Wild Hunt. It's pretty on the nose, and there's not much more to say here, so maybe I'm just gonna use this as an excuse to talk about Flynn's, who looks like an evil demonic entity, but isn't. Flynn seems to take his name from the Slavic deity called Flyns. Or perhaps I should say alleged Slavic
Very original,
deity. Most scholars seem to be convinced that Flynn's isn't actually a real deity at all and was maybe just a king at some point, and claim that Boda probably just made him up in a book that he wrote. Which is funny because Flynn's current identity is also a complete fabrication, and he is, or was technically, nobility of some sort. Again, pretty on the nose.
Yeah, it's just
really went out of their way to execute Flynn's as literally as possible, because in his book, Conrad Boda apparently described this alleged deity as a, quote, deceased figure wearing a long cloak, holding a staff, and a burning torch. So they gave him a ghostly appearance, a long coat, a spear, and a lantern, and made him a former noble. Now, questionable origins of a deity aside, Flynn does seem to also take inspiration from the Finnish will-o-wisps,
That is very
which
on
are
the
called
nose. That's
Arnivolkia, who are considered
That's not very on the nose. That's just he just sat on the nose. That sounds weird. You know what I mean?
among the Fae, and Flynn's is indeed a Fae, and also seems to be very will-o'-the-wispy since he can literally just go inside his lantern, or just is his lantern. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest. But he's also not out yet, so I'm sure we're gonna learn more about him later. Oh, but I do want to.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get like some sort of like small quest or something when Flynn's comes out, like something. Not just the Columbina things to pass the time. I really hope we get something for Flynn's, but the thing is, you already technically have with that like that small 20-30 minute quest, so maybe we won't get anything.
About a predecessor of his, the very first Lightkeeper, Solovey. Solovey was a close childhood friend of the infamous thief Reed Miller, so it should surprise no one that he takes his name from a Russian folktale called Solovey the Robber, or Nightingale the Robber, since Solovey literally means nightingale. And this is why the Lightkeepers are sometimes called Warriors of the Nightingale. They're following in Solovey's footsteps. I found a copy of the tale online, which you can find in my citations document if you're interested in reading this tale for yourself. I really only want to highlight one detail beside the, parallel between both of these guys being thieves. And that is that Nightingale the Robber appears to have have been some sort of magic bird with dragon-esque fire breath that he spews at his enemies from high up in a tree. And this amuses me greatly because Solveig received the arrow of Turbicoranus from the Frostmoon Scions and eventually retrofitted this ancient piece of draconic technology into the Lightkeeper's lighthouse. And it shoots beams of light at the abyss. It's just like the bird shooting fire at people from a tree, assuming that the tree is the lighthouse tower. Although it's not really fire in our case, because Turbicoranus appears to be an epithet for Zeus, which may explain why Flynn's is electro instead of pyro, thunder god and all that jazz. Now, as I already mentioned, Solveig was a close childhood friend with Reed Miller, master thief and founder of the Treasure Hoarders. I have a whole video about Reed Miller coming up, so I won't dive too deep.
Okay, thank God. I will 100% be watching that. I would have learned more about Reed Miller a lot, so thank God. All right. I was really hoping she was going to make one. Okay, nice.
His story, but I do need to give you a small amount of
All right,
context
thank
for
God.
the use of
I want to learn more
Raven
about
as
Reed
his
Miller.
symbol. And it has to do with his origins, which is kind of in spoiler territory, but only a little bit. So Reed Miller's origins are actually a little bit murky. Like, the game isn't explicitly clear on where he came from, which is part of the reason why I'm making a whole video about it. But the results of my investigation seem to suggest that he was born to a Frostmoon Scion mother and a Snezhnayan father. And I think the fact that Reed Miller chose a raven to represent him corroborates this hypothesis. And I know you might think I'm crazy, but in Finnish folklore, the raven was a bird that was born of Lempo and Hisi. And you remember Lempo, right? The deity of destructive love and metalwork? We'll talk about the deity Hisi in a little bit, but the Frostmoon Scions do live on Hisi Island, and Lempo is where Nashatown and most of Nod-Krai's settlements are. So to me, this suggests that Reed Miller was born of Hisi and Lempo, so a Frostmoon Scion and a Snezhnayan father. And the lore that we have seems to corroborate that as well. That would take a really long time to explain, so we're not going to do that. I found this information about the raven in a book of Finnish folk songs that go over a lot of the origins of things, and I just thought it was too cool not to include. But we're done with this for now, so let's move on and talk about Hisi Island.
All right. Yeah, I'll 100% be watching the one of Reed Miller. Okay, I'm glad that it was like, I could 100% understand because Genshin is intentionally making it a little bit murky. But, alright, I really want to learn more about it.
So in Finnish folklore, Hisi is considered a deity, or a kind of nature spirit associated with like hills. But they may not have originally started out that way, because it seems like Hisi was originally a term used to describe a sacred location that was inhabited by spiritual entities like nymphs, trolls, or other types of fae. In fact, the name literally means sacred grove of trees on a hill, which suits the island of Hisi rather well. So perhaps the word Hisi has just come to mean any sort of spiritual or fae-like creature that would have dwelled in these kinds of locations. I don't have a whole lot more to share about Hisi, but what I will add is that they did have a lot of strong associations with song magic. And I feel like that's very appropriate given how Columbina is very much into singing and she is their deity. And a lot of their oral traditions seem to be tied to hymns, hence Hymns of the Far North. This is also where you get the book, Hymns of the Far North. You find it on Hisi Island in the Frostmoon Enclave. Speaking of which, it is very difficult to talk about Hisi without mentioning Lauma. So I think it's Lauma time. Now, besides the antlers, the first prominent feature that people seem to notice about Lauma is her large chest area. Now, believe it or not, both of these things are...
I thought she was actually going to say something else, because,
quite lore accurate to her inspiration, the Lauma or the Laume. The Laume were celestial Latvian and Lithuanian goddesses who descended to Earth once upon a time and are incredibly ancient, dating all the way back to the Mesolithic post-Ice Age period. So it's quite appropriate that the Frostmoon Scions that Lauma belongs to are associated with both ice and the ancient city of Hyperborea. Personally, I think Hyperborea might be similar to the land of Niflheim that the 8th Dragon Lord mentioned in passing. It's a little hard to say for certain, but she does identify the moon wheel as a ritual item given to the human followers of the moons in Niflheim. So it's probable that she's talking about people like the Frostmoon Scions since they lived in the city of Hyperborea to the far north and they worshipped the moons. Just saying. Anyway, the Laume are considered to be one of the Fae, and in many ways they're quite like the Greek satyrs and centaurs, except they are predominantly female and they can also take the shape of many animals, notably goats and deer, hence the horns. They were also notoriously large-breasted, hence Lauma's, yeah. In addition to all of the above, the Laume were also incredibly skilled weavers, and they often appear in threes, so they're often connected to triple goddess archetypes. Considering the fact that the moons of Genshin are also triple goddesses and are associated with the weaving of Tevat's fate, a Lauma makes for a perfect priestess. And finally, I think we should wrap up this mythology primer by talking about why this region is even called Nod-Krai in the first place.
Oh, okay.
From what I can tell, the name Nod-Krai references two things. The first is the biblical land of Nod found in the book of Genesis. Nod is best known for being the place where Cain was exiled to after he killed his brother Abel and was rejected by the grace of God. And that's because the land of Nod notably lacked the presence of God, which made it a perfect
Nod-Krai.
safe haven for wanderers, exiles, and fugitives, or just those who forsake God. Which I
get
realize
it.
sounds a bit silly since, technically speaking, the Frost Moon Scions were the first settlers of Nod-Krai and are thus considered its natives, and they worship
Bro, a Valorant Genshin collab and Lorma's in there would be crazy.
the first settlers of Nod-Krai and
Great.
are thus considered its natives, and they worship a moon goddess. But it is noteworthy that Kolumbina, or Kutar, isn't one of Teyvat's 7 gods. In many ways, she too is in exile. Now, as for the Krai part of the Nod-Krai name, it's actually a term used to describe a territory of Russia, and in the case of Nod-Krai, it's most likely referring to Finland, since Finland became a part of the Russian Empire following the Finnish War of 1808 until it declared independence in 1918.
Oh, interesting.
Admittedly,
Alright.
Krai
I didn't
isn't
know
a term
Finland was a part of Russia at one point. That's actually crazy. No, obviously, yeah, Shizdai is based in Russia, so yeah. Interesting.
only used for Finland, but given all the other references to Finnish history, culture, and mythology that we've gone over today, I do think it's a safe bet. This name also lends some insight
makes
into
a
the
lot
kind
of
of
sense.
relationship that Nod-Krai has with Snezhnaya, since the latter takes heavy inspiration from Russia. And I think that'll do
Yeah.
it for today. Now, I don't know if you guys find
Jesus.
mythology guides as fun as I do, but if you made it this far, I hope
I
you
mean,
at
it's
least learned
definitely
something fun.
interesting.
And if
Definitely
you
for the
didn't, well,
links
stay
on the
tuned for a
nose
big old
there.
theory coming up
Definitely
that's based on
flipped.
all of the mythology that I
Everything
didn't
was
cover
identical.
today. Let me tell you,
Uh,
it's gonna be a doozy. But I think
I'm really
now
excited
it
for
is
the
time
reveal
for me to
video, I
sign
will
off.
be
So
honest. I'm
thank
really
you all
excited
so much
for
for
that one.
watching.
I
Take
just wanna
care of
learn more
yourselves
about
out there, and I will see you all in the next
Because I'm so
one.
confused with him.
Bye-bye.
Because I feel like I should have already know a bunch about him from that world class, but I friggin' learned nothing, so... I mean, yeah, but obviously make sure if you haven't subbed to Ashoka, make sure you do, and make sure you like the video, make sure you watch her video all the way through by clicking the link in the description. Yes, I'm calling it 6.0. Yeah, I mean, Genshin also calls it 6.0. And like, if you go into the game and you look at the bottom left corner, it says 6.0. It literally is 6.0, you know? Like, it is. Shiznaya is going to be 7.0. So yeah. I got to mention that Voyager being the second descendant is my assumption. Oh yeah, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Oh yeah, obviously, like with the third descendant being ripped to pieces, bro. I've just really want to learn more about like the second, the third descendant stuff on like the main story. I think that'd be very interesting. But yeah, hopefully everyone did enjoy. Make sure to like and subscribe. I'm just very very excited for Luna 2/6.1. I'm just very excited to I just want to do more Nod-Krai. I just want to do more of the story. And learn more about obviously like Ria, see what his plans are going into that cave where the traveler's ship crashed. Varka being there as well. Oh my god. But yeah, I'm just freaking Nod-Krai is freaking amazing so far. I just cannot wait. But yeah, I guess oh, by the way, I think this is actually the video that got me into Honkai Impact. By the way, if you don't know, I got into Honkai Impact because I thought it would be connected because of this Ashikai video, because Ashikai was like, well, Honkai Impact could be connected to Genshin because of the imaginary tree and so on stuff. So I was like, well, shit, I really like Genshin. I really like the story. I probably should play Honkai Impact. And, well, 2.5 years later, here I am. But yeah, I think this is actually the video that got me into Honkai Impact, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, I guess we'll see you on the next one. Peace.